Good afternoon, good Sunday afternoon, everyone. I am Latrissa Favorite, and this is the first episode of Tell My Story. Again, this is the Tell My Story initiative, and what the Tell My Story initiative is a platform to allow people to tell their story of their past traumas, their present traumas, their tragedies, those things that have kept them hindered all of their life. So I wanted to give others a platform because I believe that healing comes from telling your story, and I believe that you cannot heal what you do not reveal. So again, this is a platform to give people the opportunity to tell their story of their past and present traumas and tragedies, and to be healed from telling their story. That has always been my goal. That is the ministry that God has given me, is to help heal his people. So that is what I am going to do, and I hope that you join in and watch the video every Sunday. A new episode will come out every Sunday, and we're going to start off by telling my story in hopes that it will encourage others to want to tell their story. Also, as I have been healed, we are constantly healing. So by releasing my story, I am going to heal more. Hopefully it will encourage others that can, that recognize with my story, and that empathize with my story, and may have went through the same things or some of the same things that I've went through. So again, this is just an opportunity to release for myself, and to help others release, and to start an emotional healing in our communities, in our culture. We are taught a lot not to say anything in the Black community. So this is not just for the Black community. Let me just first say that. But we are taught in the Black community, which is my community and my culture, is that we don't tell our business. We keep our business to ourselves. We don't put it out there. So I want to shift that understanding and that logic, because we want to be healed. We want to be a healed people. We want to be a healed culture, and we need it in our communities, in our culture, and a lot of other communities and a lot of other cultures. So I do want to shift that understanding, because in that narrative, because that's not a correct narrative. So again, I am here to tell my story. As I've said in my last video, the introduction to the Tell My Story initiative, I am a mother of 6. I am a grandmother of 1. I am currently engaged. I am a minister. I am a spiritual advisor. I am also a spiritual healer, and I am an author. I am in the makings of writing a couple books that I will hopefully release either the end of this year, 2023, or the beginning of 2024. And again, everything is God-centered. I believe God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. That is what I believe. I believe without the Trinity, there is nothing that you can do. So that is my belief. That's what I believe. Everything I do will be centered around God and the ministry that he has for me. So the first episode I want to talk about is my childhood trauma. I was raped and molested multiple times throughout my life, throughout my childhood, should I say. The first time being I was 8 years old by a stranger. And then the other times, which was multiple times, I can't even count how many, was by family members. So at some point it had become the normal to me. It was like it was just normal. It was like a game, to be molested or to be raped for myself. It had just become so normal because it happened so many times, that, like I said, that was my normal. But what I want to talk about is the first time I was raped at 8 years old. I was at a family member's house. They lived in an apartment building, and me and my cousins were running around the apartment building playing tag, something that that's normal to do for 8 years old. Maybe not in the apartment building, maybe outside, but we were running in the apartment building, up and down the stairs and up and down the different floors. And there was a guy that lived on the first floor. My family member lived on the third floor. There was a guy that, an adult male that lived on the first floor, and I would see him in my family member's apartment. So I thought he was a good person, just kind of never thought about it, just thought about, oh, I see him around, he's in the apartment a lot, I see him at their house, so he has to be okay, it has to be family or just friends of the family, and he was an okay guy. So as I was running through the apartment, I was trying to find somewhere to hide, and he opened his door and he seen that I was looking for somewhere to hide, and he said, oh, you can come hide in here. And again, me as being 8 years old, I didn't think anything was wrong with it, so I went into his apartment. And as I got into his apartment, he took me into his room and he set me on his bed. And I remember him pulling out, not sure, but from down south, they had like these big pickle jars, these huge jars that would have pickles. And that's kind of what I remembered, is that it was a huge jar. And it didn't have pickles in it, but it had condoms in it. And it was full with condoms. And at that time, I didn't know what a condom was. I didn't know what it was for. Didn't really understand anything. But I now know it was just a big jar full of condoms. And he pulled it out and he said, which one do you want to use? And me being an 8-year-old, I seen a pink, fluorescent pink one. And I said, oh, the pink fluorescent one. And so he got that pink fluorescent one. He put it on himself and he began to rape and molest me. And after he was finished, he was pushing me out his door. And at this time, my family member was looking for me because it was time to eat dinner. And so they didn't know where I was, so they were all looking in the they were looking in for me in the apartment. And as he was pushing me out the door, my family member was coming down the stairway, and so they seen me getting pushed out of the door. And that person looked at him and they said to him, if her dad finds out, he will kill you. And that sparked something right there in me, and I'll get back to that. But that was their response, was, if her dad finds out, he's going to kill you. The next response was to me, which was a slap in the face, and I was told to get my fast ass upstairs. Not sure if a lot of you know what fast means, but in the black community, black culture, it means that you are being promiscuous and you are being flirtatious to the opposite sex, and you're being fast. You're not, it's out of your league. You shouldn't be acting this way as a young person, or as a person. You should be a little slow. So we have been given the word fast. So I was slapped, and I was told that at 8 years old to get my fast ass upstairs. So again, that was a second thing that set my life on a certain trajectory. Right at that moment, and I didn't realize this, but right at that moment, I took on the heavy burden of caring about others' needs over my needs and over myself, because I was told that, the guy was told that her dad would kill you if he found out. So that made me think first, oh gosh, I don't want my dad to kill anybody. I don't want my dad to go to jail and not be with me. So that was the first step of me learning, and that being put into me, to care about others' well-being versus my own. The second thing was when I was told I was being fast, is that it taught me that I was wrong. So at 8 years old, I'm thinking, oh, I'm wrong for what just happened. I can't tell anybody. I can't tell my mom. I can't tell my dad. I can't tell anybody because I'm going to be in trouble. I'm wrong. I was being fast. This is what I was asking for. So I learned that this was my fault. I took on that heavy burden that it was my fault. It was because I was in a place I shouldn't have been. I was doing things that I shouldn't have been doing. So now this is my fault. The experience was such a traumatic experience that I can remember. I am 45 years old now, and I can remember back to what I ate that day, that night, at 8 years old. And I remember having fried chicken and salad, and that was the first time that I ate ranch on my chicken. At 8 years old, that's what sticks out in my head because it was such a traumatic experience. So it's almost like my brain stopped at that moment. As I said, it started this trajectory of my life, and it was horrible because, as I said, I was scared to tell my parents. I cared about others more than I cared about myself. I thought it was my fault. I've learned that I had started to think that abuse was what I deserved. And so within my life and my relationships, I've always chose abusive men, whether it was physical, mental, and emotional. I've always chose abusive men. I won't talk on that topic in this episode, but I will talk about my relationships and how that incident that happened at 8 years old and all those other incidents that happened, how that shifted my way of thinking and how it put me on a downward spiral in my life. Because I had never had the opportunity to heal. I never had the opportunity to release it. I never had the opportunity to let it go. I never had the opportunity to tell anyone. So I dealt with this my entire life. The first time, I never was even able to say that I was raped or molested. I thought that I had sex. It's not possible for an 8-year-old to have sex. You're definitely raped or molested at 8 years old. It's not even possible for you to consent to that. So I didn't understand that. So I thought all those years of my life that I had sex, and I was wrong for having sex with a grown adult male. And I wasn't able until I was 30 years old, which was 15 years ago. I shared with one of the women at my church, and I actually said the words out of my mouth, raped, and I was kind of shocked. And at 30 years old, I realized that I was actually raped and molested, and that it wasn't my fault. Now, how do I get back all that I lost and all the understanding that was lost for me? How do I get that back? And so I went on this journey of healing, and it's been going on probably since I was about 30 years old. I had to go on a journey of healing, and at 30 years old, I still didn't tell my parents. I still didn't share that with anyone because I was still fearful of how I would be received, the reaction I would get. I didn't want to hurt my mom. I didn't want to hurt my dad. I didn't want to see anyone in jail. So I still had that fear of releasing it, even though I released it to someone at my church because that was what I thought was a safe place for me. But I did not think that it was safe yet for me to tell my parents. So I kept that in even at 30 years old. And again, in more episodes as we go, I will go a little deeper into that. But I was also raped and molested multiple times by family members. There was this one in particular family member that would get the rest of the family members to molest and rape me as if it was a game, as if it was a joke. And I believe that I became a prey. From the first time I was raped, I became a prey. It was like I had a scent of being molested, of being molested and being used and being abused. It was like I gave off this scent. So I became a prey. And it was like they can smell it on me. It was like they could see it on me. And when you have a predator, they can see it, they can smell it, they can feel it. And so it became a game by my family members to molest me and to rape me. And again, putting more trauma and more tragedy and more trauma and more tragedy on top of trauma. And I didn't tell my dad, again, didn't tell my mother. I didn't tell my dad because I just felt like my dad was gonna go to jail. You know, you gotta remember, I thought about all that my other family member had said to me and said to the guy, and that first guy that raped me when I was 8 years old, and they never told. And I was just so scared of losing my dad and my dad going to prison, or my dad even killing someone. I didn't even want the guy to die. That's just the compassion that I had even as a kid. Like, I don't want this man to even be killed, this human being to be killed. So I cared more about him, the person that did this act, and I cared more about my parents' reaction. So I never even told about the countless times of being molested and being raped. I never shared that. So I've carried those things my entire life. It took my confidence. My confidence was shattered. My self-esteem was shattered. My understanding was totally off. I felt again like abuse was what I was supposed to have. It had me to start dating older men because I thought those were the older men were the only type of men who wanted me and who liked me. One of my children's fathers is old enough to be my father and old enough to be her grandfather, and I had a child with him. So my understanding was totally off because of the abuse that I endured my entire life. So I thought I deserved this. I thought I deserved an older, abusive man, alcoholic man, drug addict man. My confidence, I had no confidence. I didn't care how many times people told me I was cute, I was beautiful, with no harm intended. I just couldn't receive it because all I could see was the damage and the trauma I had endured in my life, and that was in my life. That's all I could see. So it didn't matter what people said to me. And again, as I said, I have children. I have 6 children. One thing that this caused in my life was I had 6 children by the time I was 25 years old. That's really something. I had 6 children by the time I was 25. And I don't think people tend to look at why that is. A lot of people tend to look with an eye of judgment, not really trying to figure out why this young girl would start having kids at 16 and why she would have 6 children by the age of 25 within 9 years to have 6 children. I was called fast. I was called a hoe. I was called promiscuous. I was called everything you can think about. I was talked about by my family members. It was terrible, but no one wanted to understand or took the time to understand. And maybe that's because of their trauma in their life. You never know what anyone else has endured. So maybe it was because of the trauma in their life that they couldn't see past their trauma, that they definitely couldn't see past my trauma. So I endured a lot of backlash from the choices that I made in my life. And so that gave me another complex of me being a person that made bad decisions all my life. So I had no confidence in me whatsoever. I had no esteem in me. I just felt like I was a person that made bad decisions, that just was good enough to have kids and have sex with, and sexual things. I never felt anything good about myself in my entire life, and no one knew it. And if they did know it, they definitely didn't try to get me the help that I needed. And I don't say that I'm blaming anyone. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm not mad at anyone. This was a journey that I was supposed to go on so that I can help others heal, and that I can teach others about emotional healing. So I'm not upset. I just want to make sure that I put out there what was happening and what was going on, so that other people that may see things, or these things may be going on in their life, somebody else can recognize it, and people can start to be aware of the signs and what to look at when looking at young girls, even young boys, in their life, or wondering why people are doing the things that they're doing. I want the signs to be there, and so that you can be aware of what is going on in the life of people, and maybe you can lend a helping hand to someone. I was so angry my entire life. I was broken. I mean, broken is not a word, but I put on a mask for everyone. I remember at church we had a conference, and I remember it was about taking off your mask, and I had the prettiest mask, and it was just so pretty, and it was dialed up, and it looked so good on me. And I'm reminded how I always kept myself, I prided myself on keeping myself together. I wanted to be well kept together, so I dressed nice. I made sure that my hair was nice. I made sure I took care of my well-being, my physical well-being, before I would pay bills or anything. As I became a mother, things were so out of whack and so out of control, and my understanding was so off, that that's what meant more to me. And the reason why it meant more to me is because I was trying to put up a facade. I wanted people to not see the brokenness of me, and the lack of confidence, and the lack of self-esteem. That I wanted to make sure I always presented myself as a person that was well put together. But I was broken, totally broken, totally broken, totally broken. But again, I always had my hair done nice. I always had my nails done. I always had my toes done. I always had on nice clothes. I always had the fancy purse. I've always had, because I needed to keep up a facade. I needed people not to be able to recognize that I was so hurt, and I had so much pain, and that I had endured so much trauma and tragedy in my life, because I felt it was my fault. I felt this is what was supposed to happen in my life. And the crazy part about it is, because I put up this facade, no one cared. No one was aware. No one understood what I went through. They just would say, oh, she's 16 and she has a baby. Oh, she's being fast. And nobody wakes up and say, I want to be promiscuous today. No one wakes up and say, I want to be a whore today. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to be a drug addict today. No one wakes up and says, I'm going to try this today. I'm going to try that, and it's going to hurt me even more. Nobody wakes up and says that. So I want people to learn to not look with an eye of judgment, or with those condescending comments that they have of being fast, or being promiscuous, or being a whole, whatever it is, however you want to classify it or say it. I want people to think about those things that they are saying when they are referring to someone, because you never know their journey, you never know their struggle, you never know their trauma, you never know what they went through, because at no point did I just set out to be fast, or to be promiscuous, or to be whorish. And no point was that what I wanted for my life. That was just what was placed in me. And so what is in you will come out of you. And so that's what was in me. And so that is what came out of me. Throughout my life, because of those rapes and those molestations, I lived out of trauma. Every area of my life was out of trauma. I cried from a place of trauma. I loved from a place of trauma. I had my children. I made my children out of a place of trauma. I married from a place of trauma. I've married twice already, and it was out of a place of trauma, and nothing ever worked out for me. And the reason is because you attract what you are. So if you are exhibiting trauma and everything is out of a place of trauma, that's what you will attract, is someone that is also in a place and coming from a place of trauma and tragedy. I understand that now, but I didn't understand it then. So everything that I did was out of a place of trauma. I even chose my friends from a place of trauma. So you know how it is said that if you want to be a successful person, then you hang around successful people. If you want to be an unsuccessful person, then you keep hanging around unsuccessful people. Well, I never had the opportunity to hang around successful people is because, again, I attracted what I was. So even in my friendships with women, I attracted those women whom also had and came from a place of trauma and tragedy. So I never had a chance to be around people whom were successful because I couldn't relate to them at that moment. They couldn't relate to me at that moment because it was just trauma and just tragedy. That's all that was, it consumed me. And so I couldn't relate to them and they couldn't relate to me. So I could only relate to those people who were coming from the same place that I came from. But what I want to say in this first episode is that something has to break. Something has to change, especially in our community and in our culture. And again, I'll say again, this is not just for the Black culture, the Black community. This is for the Caucasian community. This is for the Mexican community. This is for every type of culture, every community that there is, because there are traumas and tragedies that we need to heal from in our life. Every one of us on this earth has endured some type of trauma, some type of tragedy, some type of hurt, some type of pain, some type of just every brokenness, some type of anything. Everything that we have, everything is not peaches and cream. Everything's just not going to go right. And when we continue to deal and have people whom are not healed bring other people into this world whom are not healed, then we're going to just continue on with the generational curse, and we're going to still have brokenness kids, have broken kids, broken people, and it's just going to be a life of brokenness. So again, I believe that all of us have endured some type of brokenness, some type of pain, some type of trauma, some type of tragedy, and we can all benefit from the fact and from this initiative of telling your story. I believe again that by speaking and releasing, you are taking the power away from the trauma. You are taking the power away from the secret. You are taking the power away from the curse. So I believe that if we want to begin to see a change in ourselves, a change in those whom we are connected to, a change in the people in our lives, a change in our family members and our church members, and a change in the young people that we see out in the community that are doing everything under the sun right now. When I see people, our young youth now, I just see a lot of brokenness, a lot of hurt, a lot of people trying to find their way, a lot of anger, and nobody understands that they're angry and why they're angry. They're not aware. They're just looking at the deeds that they are doing. They're just looking at that, but they don't understand that they are living their circumstance of trauma and tragedy. They are just living out their life from a place of trauma and a place of tragedy. And so I believe that again, with the Tell My Story initiative, that we will begin to see things differently. We will begin to open up and release those things. I believe that you should tell your children your story and what you've endured so that they can understand their story, and they can understand why they went through the things they went through and why they may be going through the things they are going through now at this point in their life. So I believe sharing and releasing is a very positive, a very powerful, a very empowering thing to do. So again, that is the goal with the Tell My Story initiative, is to empower you. It is to help you release. It is to heal you emotionally. It is to encourage you to heal and be empowered. I want to really stress that this is not just an initiative to learn people's business or to gossip about people or to tell their business or whatever the case may be. This is a place to heal, a place to release, and we need it. We need it. We need it. And if I can help as many people I can with this video, and the video can be shared and it can be shared with other people, we can change the world. We can help change the world. We can help our youth. We can help our communities and our cultures. So again, my name is Latrissa Favorite. I am on all social media platforms as Latrissa Favorite. The Tell My Story Initiative. There will be a new video every Sunday. This is the first episode, so you can search Latrissa Favorite. You can search Tell My Story Initiative, and you would want to subscribe to my channel, share the video, share the video, share the video. We're going to be getting into a lot of things in the next episode and the next episode after that. So going forward, we're going to get into things as like my relationships and having children out of trauma. A lot of people kind of cringe when I say I have had my children out of a place of trauma. I am not saying that my children were bad, or I don't love my children, or that my children weren't supposed to be here. I will not say that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that I had children out of trauma. I had them out of a place of trauma. Not one of those fathers that I've had, and I have 3 baby fathers, not one should I have been with. But again, because coming from a place of trauma, everything I do in my life is from a place of trauma. I ended up having my kids out of a place of trauma. So we will elaborate on more of that statement. We will elaborate on what those acts of being raped and molested, what they caused. We'll go a little more in depth with my story. And in the future, we will also hear the stories of others, men and women. This is not just for women. This is not an initiative that is just for women. It is for all, young, old, men, women, black, white. It is for all cultures, all communities, all ages, all ethnicities, all groups. This is what the Tell My Story Initiative is for. So I want to encourage you to be blessed. I want to encourage you to heal. I want to encourage you to tell your story. I want to encourage you to live a life of fullness. I want to encourage you to live a whole life. And you cannot live a whole life of fullness unless you are emotionally healed. So always remember, as I say, healing above all else. Healing comes before all else. We tend to focus on our physical healing, and we want to physically be healthy, and we want to physically be thinner, and but we always forget about our emotional and our mental health. So healing first, our emotional, is the most important of all, because everything else will fall into place if you heal emotionally. Again, I am Latrissa Favorite. This is a Tell My Story Initiative. This is the first episode. I thank you for watching. Hit the subscribe button and share. And follow me next Sunday, where you will be able to see another video where I'll go in a little depth, a little deeper about my childhood traumas and how those traumas affected my entire life, even as an adult. And how it had to set me on a path of destruction. But again, we won't just talk about the negative piece of it, but we'll talk about how God has did some glorious things in my life as well, as I have begun to heal, and how he will continue to heal us, and how he will continue to do some glorious things. So again, be blessed. Thank you. This is the Tell My Story Initiative, episode 1.